If you divide the human experience into 5 parts, the spiritual part of life has to be considered very important. We all sense that there is more going on in the human experience than we can experience just in this life. There is a part of us that probably will survive in eternity. We sense that that is true, and there is evidence to support that notion. And it's not just an empty hope. If that is true, and we try to grasp the notion of eternity, we don't measure up. We don't measure up to the ability to grasp even what eternity is. Imagine a line on a piece of paper that's 10 inches long that represents 100 years of life on earth. And next to it, start drawing a line which represents eternity. 10,000 years from now, you're in many jillions of light years away, you're still drawing. Eternity is just much too large a concept for us to fully grasp. It's easier to think of eternity as the suspension of the time dimension. Time just doesn't exist anymore. You just are in eternity. So if, with that much on the line, paying attention to the spiritual part of life is very important. And so the question is, how do you proceed? Where do you look? How do you turn? It was said by some person that in the beginning God created man, and man has been returning the favor ever since. So my experience and observation is that the spiritual dimension and this analysis of the spiritual part of life really boils down to whose best ideas are you going to consider to inculcate and make your own. Are you going to look at those belief systems which put the responsibility for right standing with God on the back of you and your fellow man? Or are you going to buy into the notion that the God of perfection has already taken care of that himself, and all we have to do is to buy into his plan? Would you rather have God's plan, the originator and the creator of all things good in the universe? Would you rather have his plan or your own best thinking? Is the first question to ask yourself. That is the great definer of the great religious systems within the world. Is it God's plan, or is it some version of man's plan trying to establish right standing with God? So start there. My personal experience is that if you will get serious about the questions, and that you will value truth above all else, and decide that if you find something is true, that you're going to respond to it with courage, then you can really make progress in this area, and you can develop confidence in the spiritual area of life and confidence for eternity. It is very worthwhile. A wise friend knew that I had Air Force background and flew combat in the Southeast Asia conflict. And he asked me, "Lamar, were you scared at times over there?" And I said, "Absolutely." I was absolutely mortified at times. And he said, "If you could have known here 20, 25 years later that you would be here in good health, would it have helped then if there was somehow you could have known that and had confidence in it?" And I said, "It would have made all the difference." And he said, "You're on the right path, you're asking the right questions, and I believe that it is possible for you to live this life with that kind of confidence in where you're going in eternity. And it improves this life as well." One of the questions that I had was whether you could really believe that the Bible was the inspired Word of God. I thought it was a collection of folk tales, and you really couldn't rely on what it said because it had drifted so far probably from the original manuscripts. But I'd never really studied it for myself. I was going on hearsay. So when I looked into this important issue, what I found was that the Bible was written over about 1,500 years by many different authors in 3 different languages. Now, if there's a process that results in a manuscript, a book written through that formula, in any other discipline, agriculture or medicine or finances or whatever, just think about how the message would be convoluted and changed, and how much mankind has learned over 1,500 years of any part of its history. And so such a book that would be put together in that manner would be basically incoherent, and it wouldn't be very useful because of its internal inconsistency. And yet the Bible is very internally consistent. It's the same story. It's the same. There are no major conflicts in it. There are no major errors in it. The archaeological record, which has been uncovered, has supported that the Bible, the history of the Bible, is true. And so when I looked into it myself, it was very compelling. And that's just one of the questions that I had. The point being, in the spiritual part of life, I would very much encourage everyone to get very serious about the questions: is there a God? If so, what's God's nature? And how do I proceed to achieve right standing with God so that I can have confidence in this life and confidence in eternity? It is a very useful way to spend some time, and it can have a very great radiation effect in all parts of life.